Humanity, I love you all with all my heart, with all my might. I'm so Ray. My videos are about love, infinity, creation, because we're infinite love, infinite energy, infinite creation. This is who we are, this is our nature. I'm making a series uh, about infinite virtual cycles. Been making them for a while now. So essentially, I want to talk about this beautiful infinite virtual cycle. All virtual cycles are infinite in nature. I just want to start there. All virtual cycles are infinite in nature. All of them are. Why? Because it's duality principles. When you have these two elements, these two parts, these two wholes that come as one, because each of them has their own polarity, their own electromagnetism, all right, their own singularity. When they come together and they interact, there is this new polarity that emerges. There is this new electromagnetism, and this is this virtuous cycle that leads to infinity. And it generates an epicenter of it, the new creation that comes as a result of these two coming together. Okay, this infinite virtuous cycle that leads to this singularity, this infinite creation as a result of these two coming together as one. Okay, and this virtuous cycle that I want to talk to about is the infinite virtuous cycle. Biology and non-biology. Okay, so it's everything that is biological and everything that is non-biological, and the way they interact when they come together as one, because it leads to this infinite virtuous cycle, biological and non-biological. Okay, so to make it simple, let's start with the biological. So what's biological? Okay, so let's break it down even further into something that we can all understand, which is us, ourselves. We ourselves are biological. The human species is biological. Us. We are a living organism. We are a life form. We are biological in nature. In fact, we are the biology of infinity. We are the biological expression of infinity. We're the biological scale of infinity, of creation, the creator. Because creation, creator is this infinite virtuous cycle as well. Creator creates creations, and creations become creators and themselves create creators and creations. So you see this infinite virtuous cycle that leads to creation, creator. So if you understand that, biology, that's who we are. We are the biological expression of infinity, creation, creator, singularity, infinity, all these different virtual cycles. And we are that. The biological expression of that is us, the human DNA, the infinite biology. Why? Because we're conscious and self-aware, and we understand who we are, and we can understand what is not us, what's outside us, what's non-biological, outside us. You see, so it's this infinite virtuous cycle of biological and non-biological. In this case, it's easy to start with who we are, so we can have this duality principle, this self-reflection mechanism to understand our consciousness and self-awareness. By knowing who we are, we know what we are not. But in the end, that reflection that explains to us with our consciousness, our self-awareness, our intelligence, that this is non-biological, this is outside us as biology. Those two coming together creates everything that there is, because we are the reflection of the non-biological, and the non-biological is a reflection of the biological. Biology, in contrast with non-biological, creates that difference, that principle of duality, which is essentially the polarity. You need the polarity to generate electromagnetism, and that electromagnetism leads to an energy field that has a singularity at the epicenter that leads to gravitics and telemetry and everything that originates as a result of that, the readings of the energy, right? Which is consciousness, self-awareness, everything that there is, love, everything that exists at the scales of non-biological and biological. But it's easy to understand this notion by understanding who we are first, which is biological, which is the opposite of non-biological. It's the difference. You see that duality principle. And by seeing and contrasting and comparing, then we can know for sure that we are this and what that is. But the beauty of this is that once you understand this reality, these two opposites attract, right? It's charge, it's polarity. And it creates an thing of its own, which is the combination of biological and non-biological as one, this infinite virtuous cycle, that when they come together and they interact, then everything is created as a result. Because that's what's biological and what's non-biological as one, which is everything together as one. And that is infinity. You see, because it's an infinite virtuous cycle. That is the singularity at the epicenter of this infinity, of these two polarities coming together as one. And one knowing what one is and the other one knowing what it is. And they understanding each other's differences and coming together to create together. And what do we create? Well, we create everything that exists as a result of knowing the difference between the two. What we are and what we are not. That's outside of us. But in the end, because we are everything that exists, because there is biology and non-biology, when we interact, then everything is created as a result because it's the combination of both of us. You see our polarities. And that electromagnetism is everything that exists. It's infinity itself, it's energy, it's spherical energy, everything that there is. Space and vacuum, everything that there is comes as a result of this beautiful interaction. This incredible synergistic relationship that leads to this infinite virtuous cycle, that leads to this singularity, the electromagnetism, everything that there is. This is everything that exists. And it's the understanding of biological and non-biological. Because us, as being conscious and self-aware, we understand what isn't biological. But remember, now that we understand what biological is, let's talk about the opposite. So what's non-biological? What's this other component, this other duality principle? Because you need two, right? Duality. You need two to come together to create electromagnetism due to the polarities and charges. So that leads to electrogravitics, that leads to the singularity, that leads to telemetry, space and vacuum, everything that exists, spherical energy, right? Everything that there is. So creation, creator, all that. So if we understand these, then let's talk a little bit about, once we know who we are, we have identified who we are. We are biological. Our DNA is biological in nature. This is our nature. This is who we are. We're a biological species. We're a living organism. We're a life form. We're alive. We're biology, right? We have DNA. This is who we are. This is our nature. This is who we are as a species. So, and we're conscious and self-aware, which is what allows us, our intelligence, our sentience, is what allows us to know the difference because of our senses and everything that makes us, our space structure density within the electromagnetic field of our heart, right? That allows us to know who we are. And what is it that we aren't? Well, we aren't what's outside of us, everything that there is. And what are these things? Well, for example, the planets, what's out there, nature, that's non-biological, right? In a way, many of the non-biological components of nature that are non-biological in the way of non-human. That's what I mean by biological, because there is a lot of biology on planet Earth and in the universe that is not human in nature, right? But it's still biological. It has its own DNA structure. It has its thing. But by understanding who we are first, then we can know our biology and the others' biologies, right? And we together come as one in the end, all the biology. So we know what's biological, and then we know what's non-biological. So what are the non-biologicals then? Once you see, it starts with us as being the epicenter. Because when we are the epicenter, right? Because we are the epicenter, who we are as a species, as the epicenter of creation ourselves. And excuse the noise, because no noise is gonna stop me from making my videos. So all the noise that is happening outside, it's gonna have to be part of the video. Why? Because this is extremely important, because all that noise outside, everything that is happening outside when I'm talking about these things are fundamental, because this is all part of existence. So everything needs to come together as one, you see? Everything needs to come together as one, because that noise that you hear, that is non-biological noise. And you see, it's a big part of this video, because this video is precisely about biological and non-biological. That noise that you're hearing outside is non-biological in nature. It's synthetic. It's non-biological. It's synthetic. Okay, it's synthetic. That noise that just stopped is synthetic in nature. It's non-biological. Okay, it's non-biological. So you see, now we know who we are, because we have senses. You see, we have senses. And because of our senses, and because of our consciousness, and because of our intelligence, we can know the difference between us as biological and synthetic, non-biological. Okay, right there outside the gates, right there, making noise. So you see, because we have senses, you see, so we perceive who we are and what is not us. So this is perfect for the video. That is just perfect, because it's a perfect example, so you can understand the context of what that means. The synthetic noise is synthetic in nature, because it's non-biological. Okay, it's non-biological. That noise is not a natural noise that biology makes. Biology doesn't make that noise. You see, that noise is not biological. No human makes that noise, because it's synthetic. It's non-biological. Okay, it's non-biological. So you see, now even further, this is why we're consciousness and self-awareness, and we're intelligent in nature, because we can know the difference of who we are as a species and who we are not. You see, who we are not. The synthetic, the non-biological, that background noise is not a human noise. Humans don't make those noises. Biology, anything that is biological, doesn't make that noise. That noise is non-biological. So you see, by understanding this interaction, we know precisely who we are and who we are not. Synthetic in nature, like that, outside, that entity. Okay, so you see, and what's an entity? Well, that noise. The source of that noise is an entity, a synthetic entity, a non-biological. Okay, precisely because it's the opposite. So this is the beauty of consciousness and self-awareness. It is the beauty of consciousness and self-awareness, because we can know who we are as a species. We know who we are, and we know who we are not. And that's not us. So because that's not us, then we know who we are, which is not that. So that gives us perspective, which is this duality principle. So we understand the nature. We understand the nature of who we are and who we are not. Because we're intelligent, we see, how do we know that noise? How do we know that synthetic noise? Non-biological noise. How do we know it? Because we can hear it. And our brain decodes that, so we can hear it. And because we are biological, we know the noises of biology, the sounds of biology, and that is definitely not one of them. Okay, that's synthetic, that's non-biological. So you see, that's just an example, because if you put that into context, then we observe reality with our senses, because we're biological, and we have senses for that very reason, to know the difference. Okay, to know the difference. To know the difference between biological and synthetic, non-biological, artificial, a fabrication, an artifice. Yeah, an artifice. So if we understand this, then it's beautiful, because then we know exactly what the purpose of this video is. The purpose of this video is understanding the infinite virtuous cycle of biological and non-biological. Because by understanding that, we know who we are and we know what that is. And by knowing that, then we have perspective, because we're conscious and self-aware of knowing the difference. And by knowing the difference, we understand this principle, which is duality principle of everything that exists. Yeah, part of infinity. Because non-biologicals, synthetics, non-biologicals, are also part of reality. and we have to interact with them, with all these things that come in the proximity of biology. Okay? All of it. We have to deal with them, all of them, right? Because it's part of our consciousness and self-awareness. So we need to make sure, because they come with it, you see, it comes within the perimeter of our senses, so we can hear them because they're there, right? And because they're there, now we can observe them. And by observing them, our consciousness and self-awareness makes sense of it and decodes them. So we know what they are, non-biologicals, synthetics. That's what they are. They're all synthetics. So they're non-biological. So you see, that's what it is. And you can apply that to reality at all scales. All scales. All scales. So at a beautiful scale, which is, that was just an example. So it comes to terms with it. But beyond this example, which is a very mundane example, very basic example, we can go to bigger things that are non-biological, right? So for example, we can observe the environment around us, and we can see everything, say, inorganic matter, right? Inorganic matter. Say, for example, a rock, a stone. You see, we observe it. It's outside us. It's an object. We can see it, and it's different from us. It's non-biological. We can also say, look at the sky, and we see the cloud formations, all these formations, the seeding of clouds, non-biological, non-biological. Cloud seeding, non-biological. Cloud formations, non-biological. They're the same. They're the same. Come from the same source, non-biological. Yeah? So understand these. So the clouds, we observe them. They're outside, right? And what do? Well, they come within our proximity, so we see them, right? So what's the other thing that is a non-biological thing that we can see clearly? The sun. The sun is pure energy, but it's non-biological. But it's pure energy. It's conscious and self-aware of its own creations, creating elements, light at the epicenter, right? At the epicenter, creating light at the epicenter, right? But it's non-biological. So you see, we see the contrast. We see the contrast. We see the contrast. Comparing and contrasting this duality principle. We see the clouds covering the sun, right? Then again, non-biological. Non-biological, right? And why do we know this? Because of our nature, because we're conscious and self-aware. You see all these clouds coming and covering the sun. That's a non-biological action. A non-biological action. Yeah? So we see it. Because we're biological, we have eyes to see. And with the eyes, we see what's non-biological. Cloud seeding. Cloud formation is non-biological. Non-biological. And it's covering the sun, right? Which is non-biological too. So we see those as an example. And then we see all the other biologies out there that are different from our own biology. But they have their own existence, that they themselves might not have the same level of consciousness and awareness as we do, to know the difference between themselves as biologicals and other biological forms, or non-biologicals. Yeah. So it's this nature. It's this nature. And it's important to understand it, because if you understand this principle, right, what this means, if you understand this principle, for example, I don't know if you can hear that, that's the sound of birds. That's a biological sound. That's a biological sound, the sound of birds. And we identify it for what it is, biological. You see, and that's what consciousness and self-awareness is this infinite virtuous cycle of knowing the difference between biological and non-biological. Okay? And with the non-biological, you have all sorts of categories. And one of those categories is synthetics. Synthetics, artificials, manufactured, right? Manufactured. Lifeless forms, manufactured, right? There's no life in synthetics. No life in synthetics. They're non-biologicals. Okay? That's what they are. That's the nature. They don't have a heart. They can't think for themselves because they're non-biological entities. They're synthetic in nature. They're not alive. right? And we know the difference. We know the difference. We know what's alive and we know what's not alive. We are alive. Non-biologicals are not alive. A lot of them. But then we have non-biologicals that are pretty much alive, like the sun. The sun is very much alive. It's this infinite energy of creation, right? That created us in the first place. That led to who we are, biology, as a species, right? Our DNA structure. And you see, if you hear that noise, if you hear that noise, if you could hear it, that noise, that is a non-biological noise. Nothing in nature makes that noise. That's an artificial noise. It's a synthetic noise. It's a fabricated noise. Yeah? But then you hear the birds. That's a real noise. Natural noise. Biological noise. You see? There's fake noises, artificial noises, manufactured, and then you have real sounds of nature. Okay? And this is this beautiful harmony because we have sensory perceptions. So we can know the difference. We can know the difference between the noise, synthetic noise, non-biological noise, and the real sounds of nature. And these interactions are beautiful because you understand the difference. And that gives you a great sense of consciousness and self-awareness to know who you are, because this is who we are. Why am I making this video about biological and non-biological? Because we can understand the difference. And by understanding the difference, it pretty much tells us who we are as a species, as a human race, as the citizens of the Republic of Planet Earth, and who we are not. We're not synthetic, and we will never be. It's not going to happen. So, you see, because we're biological, this is our experience. This is what we see. This is our creation, right? This is our creation as a species. This is who we are. We are creating everything that we create with the heart of, you see that noise? You hear that? If you can hear that, that's another noise, synthetic noise. This is a non-real noise. This is not biological noise. This is a synthetic noise, right? This is not a noise that is natural. These noises are not natural, right? That's why they are no noises. They're not sounds, they're noises, right? They're to disturb our biology. Our biology. They're there to disturb our biology. That's the purpose of them, to disturb our biology. Okay? But then again, as I said, there are sounds that are non-biological. Like, for example, the frequency of the sun and the energy that is emitted by the sun, which is all sorts of waves, and they have a sound of their own that is non-biological, but it's a sound of nature, it's a sound of creation. And those sounds are in rhythm, in harmonious synchronicity with us as a species, because we are infinite eternal creators ourselves. So this video is precisely this. It's understanding the difference between biological and non-biological. And there are non-biological things that are natural occurrence in infinity, like the sun and planets, right? And all sorts of celestial objects. And within the non-biologicals, there is synthetics. Synthetics. And these synthetics are fabrications. These are artifice. These are fabrications, okay, that are not sounds of nature, right? They're not sounds of nature. For the most part, they're fantasies and illusions. They're disturbing. They're disturbing because these noises, they're not nice noises, are they? They don't make you feel good, do they? They don't want to make you love. Hey, you hear that noise and you don't feel like loving, do you? That's the purpose why those noises are there in the first place, right? To pop. They're just trying to interact with our harmonious creation, who we are because we are infinite energy, infinite love, infinite creation. This is our nature. So synthetics are there to disturb. They're there to disturb by design. Synthetics are created by design to disturb to disturb. You see, you hear those birds now. You hear the birds, right? What are these birds? Or they're natural sounds. You hear them and they make you sync with nature because it's creation itself, it's us. It makes you feel harmonious about natural stuff, who we are, biological. Because you see, non-biological sounds of nature, like the sound of the sun, the sound of the planets, the sound of the waves. Waves are the ocean. Let's talk about another non-biological. The ocean, water. Water is non-biological, right? Water is non-biological. Say lakes, rivers, the rain, waves, right? Tsunamis, big tsunamis, right? They're non-biological, are they? They are. They are earthquakes, for example, right? Earthquakes are non-biological too. Cyclones, for example. Cyclones are non-biological. Wind, non-biological, you see? But they are making sounds of nature, right? They're making sounds of nature. An earthquake has a beautiful sound, right? It's a beautiful sound. If you listen to it, it's a sound of nature. If you listen to the ocean and tsunamis, for example, they're a beautiful sound. It's a sound of nature. You see, they're non-biological, but they're beautiful, right? It's a lot of energy in a tsunami. It's a lot of energy in an earthquake. It's a lot of energy in a cyclone, right? And you listen to a cyclone, and there is a lot of energy in them, aren't they? A lot of energy, eh? Has an epicenter, the eye of the storm, right? All this energy. You know, you hear it. The wind, the wind. You can hear it. All these are natural sounds, non-biological sounds, but these sounds are they are in sync with us as a species. It's part of our nature. It's part of our nature, you see. For example, a volcano, an eruption. You listen to an eruption of a volcano. It's all these natural sounds. It's beautiful sounds. You can hear the thunder. You can hear the sounds. Lightning, right? Lightning, right? Lightning. Lightning has a sound of its own. It's called thunder, right? And these are beautiful sounds. We love those sounds in nature. It's the sounds of nature, right? All these sounds. And these non-biological sounds combine with biological sounds, you see? And it creates everything that we know. That's why when we're outside and we listen to the rain, it's beautiful. Because it's all these sounds of nature, right? Rain is non-biological, but it's still real. And that's our example. So we know what's non-biological and biological, you see. And in between, you always have these synthetic sounds that are not biological, but they're synthetic. They're not sounds of reality. They're not sounds of nature. They're artificial sounds. Artificial sounds. And these sounds are not real sounds. Hey, I'm being nice. They're noise. They are waves of noise. This is disturbance. This is not harmonious in nature, right? This noise is not harmonious in nature. It's synthetic. It's non-biological. Okay. So why am I making emphasis to this? Because it's important for us to understand our senses as biological organisms, so we know the difference. Because we understand the sounds of nature at a non-biological level scale, which is the sounds of the sun, right? The sounds of the planets. Everything has a resonance in existence. The sounds of the water, the oceans, the lakes, the rivers, right? The sounds of the wind, everything, right? There's a sound to non-biological. That is a sound that is harmonious with us because it's this interaction. You see, it's this interaction. You see, because then you have the wind, right? And then the wind is high wind, right? And then what happens interacts with nature and biological things like trees, for example. And then you listen to trees, right? And trees are this beautiful noise, right? This beautiful sound, I mean, like leaves moving, branches moving, and you hear that, and then it's just a beautiful sound because it's a natural sound. It's a sound that is harmonious in nature because of all the ecosystems and the support systems That's why the sound of storms are still beautiful, because the sound, beautiful sounds in there, beautiful sounds that are in synchronicity with us as a biological form. Because remember, biological and non-biological, we come together as one. We come together as one. We come together as one because we're part of infinity ourselves. The sun created us, is non-biological, right? But we can see what the sun is as biological organisms that we are. So you see, it's this infinite virtuous cycle, because the sun created us, but then we became the organism, the biology that consumes the energy from the sun. You see, we stare at the sun is right there. You stare at the sun and you get that energy inside. You breathe oxygen, which comes from what? From the elements that were created where? On the surface of the planet. Water, you see, it's oxygen and hydrogen. We drink it. So it's all this. You see, it's non-biological, but it's part of everything that is outside us, because we need non-biologicals. We need it because we consume water, we consume oxygen, we drink food. Some food is organic, but might not necessarily be biological. But for the most part, it is. So you see, we also consume these life forms, these organic life forms, this vegetation we call food. And we also consume other biological life forms, the way of animals, right? That's what we do. So you see, is this our biological form interacting with all the other biological forms and the non-biological forms, and finding balance in reality, right? Finding balance in reality. You see, and understanding that, because once you understand the nature of biological and non-biological and what it leads, which is this beautiful interaction, because all these non-biological, right? All the non-biologicals out there, all of them, the sun, the water, the wind, all these things, the atmosphere, the terrains, the lands, the landscapes, the minerals, right? All these non-biologicals, inorganic matter. Okay, so all this, right, it's there to essentially support us as biology. Because all these minerals, right, all these minerals essentially end up in the organic food that we consume, because think about it, the soil is non-biological, right? But there is minerals in the soil, and that soil grows food, right? And we eat that food, and that food, it's getting the nutrients that it needs, the minerals from the soil. So you see, that organic is consuming inorganics, minerals. And these minerals allow that organic form to form into this life of biology that then we consume. And it has all sorts of elements and minerals in them, right? It's fuel for us. But also we drink water, which is essentially non-biological. And then we consume the energy of the sun through our eyes and in the way of hydrogen in the water. Right. And we consume that, right? We drink and then we breathe oxygen, you see, which is air. The air in the environment. But for example, we don't consume that noise that you can hear now. That plane, we don't consume that. That's noise. See, that's not something we consume. We don't require that to exist. That noise is a non-requirement for life forms like us. That noise that was outside, I don't consume that noise. None of us do. Right? The non-biological noises that are synthetic, we don't need them. Those noises are not needed at all. At all. At all. So essentially, they're just there to disturb us as a species. As a species, they're to disturb. Okay? They're there to disturb because it goes against our nature. You see, it's this noise, bothering, annoying. Okay, that's the intention of it, because it's just primitive technology. It's primitive technology. Because our technology as a species, now that we know the difference between biological and non-biological, and we understand what's natural because of the non-biological real sounds, not the synthetic ones, but the real ones. And then not the noise, but the sounds. And that's just an example, because that's just sound is just hearing is one sense, but there's all sorts, right? It's all sorts, because we can also see those synthetics making noise. We can see them. We can see them. We can hear them, right? Sometimes you can smell them. You can taste them as well. You can touch them. You see? So it's not only hearing. Hearing is because it's what you can hear, because you're not seeing them. And in video, you can only see and hear. We don't have video at this stage of evolution where we can smell, touch, or taste. Right? So what is this then? So it's precisely this, right? It's precisely this. It's knowing the difference. Because if you understand who we are as the central species in the universe, our planet orbits the central sun of the universe, right? This is what our planet is. It orbits the central sun of the universe, right? That's what it does. It orbits the central the central sun of the universe. We are the biological form that originated in the epicenter of the universe, or the human race. And in our DNA, we have encoded all our technology that allow us to create planet Earth to be here in the first place, because we manufacture planet Earth ourselves. But you see, we manufacture planet Earth with biological and non-biological, because we understood the difference and the necessity for existence to be both, because of duality principles. But if you listen to what we manufactured, it doesn't make those noises, does it? What are the noises that our creation made, planet Earth? The sounds of nature, the sounds of the planet, which are harmonious with us because they're non-biological, but they are beautiful sounds that are in resonance with us, with our species. Right? They're coherent sounds. They're waveforms. They're resonance because they're natural. They're non-biological, but they're still natural. They're not synthetic. They're not synthetic. They're natural sounds, right? Because we're the most ancient species in the universe. We're the epicenter, the central sun, the very epicenter of it. And we were the first species, the central species of this universe. And by becoming the central species of this universe, we had all the competitive advantages that you can imagine, because we were the first one. And by being the first one, everything came after us. Why? Because the epicenter is the central sun of this universe, the singularity. Everything that came out of the light that came from the singularity of the sun, the central sun of this universe, our sun, where all the electromagnetic tension on the surface of this sphere, which is the universe, got released to that point, and all the light emanated from it. And that light formed this central galaxy, which is the Milky Way that we inhabit. And we're the epicenter. You see, the central sun of our galaxy, the Milky Way, is the central sun of the universe. It's the epicenter of the universe, because the universe is a sphere. It's energy. And the epicenter of it is the central sun, and this is where we are located. And our species essentially developed because of the non-biological creator, the sun, and all the different energy coming out of it, densifying into planets and stuff. So we emerged as a life form eventually, with the vegetation and everything in the planets that allow us to have an atmosphere, that allow us to develop as a species that we are. But we did that before anyone else, any life forms. Why? Because we had all the competitive advantage by being the first. So they all came after us. So we developed first. And by doing that, we became the most ancient species, the oldest species, right? The most technologically advanced, the most conscious, the most self-aware. In fact, that's why we are the image of the creator, and the creator is the central sun. So we have a heart that generates an electromagnetic field, which is spherical in nature, and it's energy, it's electromagnetic. So we're light spherical energy, we're light spherical beings, because just like the sun. And within that structure, that surface, is a body. It's a space structure density of who we are as a species. So we have our consciousness, self-awareness, which is the DNA. All with the DNA, because it's our DNA that evolved into this level of infinity. And how do we do this? Because we were the first species, so we started to understand biological, non-biological. And we started to observe our planet and everything where we came from, which is not planet Earth. but close because we're still in the proximity of the central sun. And because we're this species, we understood consciousness and self-awareness because we were so close to the epicenter of everything. We were the first ones. So, and by being the first ones, we were able to have enough cycles to evolve into consciousness and self-awareness to know the difference between biological and non-biological. So we understood the dynamics of it, and we became masters of space and vacuum. So we started to create technologies that were spherical in nature because we understood that we were spherical, and we understood that creation was spherical in nature. And we became creators ourselves because of the creator created us, and we as the creation became the creator by becoming conscious and self-aware of ourselves and everything that there is because of intelligence and consciousness and self-awareness, which is a fundamental part of who we are as a species, all encoded in our DNA memories who we are. So essentially what we started to do is to manufacture spherical technology. Why? Because just mimicking the sun, because the sun is spherical and it's infinite energy output. And we knew that our electromagnetic field was spherical. So by designing spherical technology, we will be able to have the same phenomena occurring, technologically speaking, by having technology that can harness infinite energy, singularities at the epicenter. So we started to create singularity devices that we encoded in our DNA. Why? Because by encoding our technologies in our DNA, we would be able to interface with them with a thoughts and consciousness, so they would be commanded and they will do as we want them to do, right? Because with these technologies, we eventually use them as our spaceships. So we would have, each human would have one spherical device that will be a spaceship, but also because it interfaces with us, it would also be a personal assistant. And because it had an infinite source of energy in it, because of the singularities in the epicenter, harnessing the energy of the central sun that we were so close to, we would be able to create anything that we wanted with our thoughts and our consciousness and move anywhere in the universe immediately. Because by tapping into the energy of the central sun, we were tapping into the electromagnetic field really of the universe. And by doing that, these electrogravitics that generated these spaceships that cancel out the gravity so we can move instantly everywhere without having to deal with the tension of gravity around us in the objects, we would be able, by canceling that in the way of electrogravitics and mastering that singularity, because the energy was coming from the electromagnetic field of the universe, which is what creates the singularity in the first place. We were harnessing that and creating that singularity. And by doing that, the telemetry of it was all the readings of the electromagnetic field of the universe, meaning all the locations, all the vectors, all the coordinates in the universe. So we will be able to go anywhere in the universe instantly because of the filaments. We can just manifest there. Teleportation, as it's called. Teleport. Live state. And we wouldn't have any experience of time, relativity, or anything. So it's not that we will get there in a million years time. No. It would be immediate, right, in our technology. And we would do that. And what we started to do is to use that technology to fill spherical vacuum thresholds in space structures within the universe. So we would create galaxies ourselves. By how? By generating the electromagnetic field in that spherical vacuum threshold with the energy, and that would generate the singularity in the epicenter. And that would be the central sun of a galaxy. So we would accelerate time and see how it worked out and panned out and all the life forms that originated as a result. So we became the species. And we essentially ended up realizing that we wanted to go outside the scope of our universe because we were the masters of our universe, the central species of it, the epicenter of it. But we couldn't go outside of it. So essentially what we started to realize is that in order for us to do that, we needed to evolve further. And the only way to do that is to get closer to the central energy of the sun. So our biology can become closer to energy itself by becoming one with it, if possible. So that was the thinking. We knew that it was possible because evolution is infinite. And we knew that by getting closer to infinity itself, the central energy of the universe that created everything in the first place, including us, we will be able to do that because we understood, you see, this infinite virtuous cycle of biological, non-biological. And we created non-biological things like our planet, which is a technology. So we used our technology to manufacture planet Earth because planet Earth became this spherical spaceship planet that we cataloged to the central sun of the universe. So, and in that way, we created all the systems with all the technologies that we learned of all the biological forms and non-biological forms out there and put them into one planet. So we collected all the samples of all the biological life forms and the non-biological elements of existence that are there into one planet that could host our life form. Okay, and this became our whole culture. So we created this planet and anchored to the central sun. Why? Because this was the closest proximity that we could be to the central sun that would still be able to host our DNA structure that was encoded in our technology. Because the planet, that's why all the biological forms in our planet, animals, non-animals, organic, non-organic, all these, they have DNA structure that is similar to us. Why? Because we encoded that in them. That's why, right? Because the planet is a technology. It's a spaceship that we created. It's just a huge spaceship that resembles a planet, a natural formation. So, but we created it. Okay, it's a non-biological. Our planet is non-biological. We created it. Okay, and we tidal locked it to a central sun. And we could do this with the spherical technologies that we had. And because we were embedding everything in our DNA code, we were encoding everything, we would be able to interface. So the planet, we could interface with everything, all the life forms, because they had our DNA in them. So we would interface with them. And our consciousness was there where we had this harmonious, beautiful sanctuary of a planet that we ourselves manufactured with our technologies, our spherical technologies. So we can get closer to the central sun so we can evolve even further. And this is what we did. This is what we did. And this is who we are today. But then after an infinite number of cycles, essentially what happened is that because we work, our dream of the ancestors, our ancestors, which is all in our DNA, our heritage and legacy, was to evolve into infinity. We wanted to become one with infinity. We wanted to ourselves go to other universes or create other universes if possible, meet other species from other universes. This is what we wanted because we were contained within the electromagnetic field of these universes. And we knew that we weren't alone because it cannot be that we are the smartest species, the central species of everything there is. Because that energy itself that is creating the singularity of that electromagnetic field they needed to have come from somewhere. And we knew that that is what infinity was. So we, in our understanding of the sphere and the nature of it, we knew that there is an infinite number of universes. And all these universes is just like the infinite number of star systems, the infinite number of galaxies within our own universes. You see, it's all this energy that at different scales of creation. But the energy of infinity is a higher energy that created this universe in the first place, our central sun. And we knew this, so we wanted to be able to become that or be able to access that. Either or. And we knew that in order for us to do that, we needed to evolve closer to infinity by being closer to the energy of creation itself, which is the central sun. And this is why we manufacture planet Earth, to be able to do that. And we took all the samples of all the DNA, biological and non-biological, the best of the best that we found in the universe, all the biological and all the non-biological, and we manufactured planet Earth. And we encoded our DNA, everything, everywhere, so we will be able to control those things as part of our ecosystem because we would interface with them with our thoughts and consciousness, just like we did with the spherical spaceship technology that allowed us to create planet Earth in the first place and move around and became the species that we have. Because we were the first species, so we have all the competitive advantages to evolve to this level without anyone bothering us. No synthetics. So essentially, what happens? We did, and we evolved into that. And what we ended up doing, because we encode everything in our DNA, our species encodes everything in our DNA. This is what we do, is the way we do things for all sorts of reasons. So essentially what ended up happening was that when we evolved, remember, we were harnessing the energy of the central sun with our spherical technology to then interface with it, and then it would do the creation, right? That we would command with our thoughts and consciousness and our self-awareness. So it was outside us. You see, a non-biological outside us, creating us the biological entity, the biological organism, guiding and commanding it with our thoughts and consciousness, because we were interfacing with the DNA, right? It's that biological, non-biological, you see? But that energy came from the non-biological energy source, which was the central sun, powering that singularity, so we will be able to create with it, right? So what ended up happening is because we were encoding everything in our DNA, and our DNA is within us, our biology. So we could interface with the non-biological technology that we were creating, all this spherical technology. So What ended up happening was that as part of our evolution, remember, we got closer to the sun and we manufactured planet Earth, right, with our spherical technology and encoded our DNA everywhere on planet Earth. That's why our DNA is everywhere here. All the animals and stuff and plants, they have DNA because it's us. We created them. So essentially, what ended up happening was that we evolved because we got closer to the sunlight. And by getting closer to the sunlight, our body evolved. And remember, we were using this non-biological technology to harness the energy of the central sun, which is non-biological. And with that energy, we would create, right? By interfacing with our thoughts and consciousness. Everything that we did, galaxies moving around, our spaceships creating this planet, everything that we would do, encoded in our DNA. But because all of that technology was encoded in our DNA, and we started to consume the energy of the central sun ourselves directly because our eyes evolved into being able to just do this, stare at the sun and harness all that energy ourselves. And to get closer, and you're just evolving in the proximity of it, all what we do, right? And the technology of planet Earth, that was essentially the best of the best of all the biological and non-biological in the universe that we put into this spaceship planet that we created that could host our DNA form. And by doing that, we've evolved into this incredible species. And what we ended up becoming was, because we were channeling the energy of the sun through us, you see, in the beginning, we were channeling the energy of the sun through our devices. So then with our thoughts, they would do it, right? But then again, because that technology was embedded in our DNA, was encoded in our DNA, and we ended up just channeling the energy of the sun ourselves, we became the technology. So the next step was that we didn't need the spherical technology to create because we were interfacing, right? We ourselves were channeling the energy. So we became the singularities ourselves. And because all the technology was embedded in our DNA, then we were embedded to consciously guide them, right? Command them. Well, what ended up happening? Well, with our thoughts and consciousness, we were commanding what? Ourselves, as a spherical technology that we became to create ourselves. So we became the creators. So we evolved into that by channeling the energy of the central sun. That's why we're light spherical energy to this level of density, because we became that. We ourselves became our technologies. We became compass ourselves as a species. So this is the species that we are. We've evolved into infinity ourselves, which was a dream of our ancestors anyway. That's why they manufactured planet Earth in the first place. You see, planet Earth is non-biological. We manufacture it. But it doesn't make those weird noises, does it? Because the noises, the sounds that nature makes, which nature is what is within the spherical technology that we created called planet Earth, makes harmonious sounds that are in synchrony with us as a species. They're non-biological sounds, but they are harmonious sounds. They're not those sounds, right? Those are synthetic sounds. They're not good sounds. They're unhealthy. Very much so. It's harmful. They are weapons. Okay? They're weapons targeting our electromagnetic field. That's what they are. So that's just the way it is. So then you see, so what happened then? Well, we evolve into this. So remember, you are what you evolve into. And when you evolve into something, you might not necessarily know what you are. You don't necessarily know what you are because you're new in this level of consciousness and self-awareness, you see? You're new in this level of consciousness and self-awareness, right? So what happens? What happens? Well, what happens is very simple, is that what we knew was the universe. We were part of it. So with our consciousness and self-awareness, we were harnessing the energy of the sun by consuming it, right? It became our food source in our planet. So that we manufacture so we can evolve to this new level. So with our consciousness and self-awareness, we were interfacing with ourselves and we were manufacturing things, right? Creating things. And what were we creating? Well, we knew universes and we were now using the energy of infinity, right? That came out of infinity, feeding the electromagnetic field and the singularity. And we would consume that energy coming from outside this universe, right? Just like the energy comes outside a galaxy to create it, this universe is created by energy from infinity itself that creates an infinite number of universes. So what we ended up doing is we ourselves will create universes with our thoughts and our consciousness. Why? Because we knew that we needed an epicenter, a central sun just like ours. So we would just manufacture the singularities of the central suns at the scale, spherical vacuum threshold of to generate an electromagnetic field the size of a universe. So all that space structure, all that tension can be released into that singularity of a central sun, and then new universes will be formed as a result of that. And because we were masters of time, because it's part of who we are as a species, we would just accelerate time to see. For what's time? Well, it's the telemetry, right? As a result of the electrogravitics of the electromagnetic field of the universe. And because we understood what telemetry is, which is readings, so we would accelerate those readings and we just kind of like dial it, and we would just go and see and accelerate the process. So it's real time, but it's ourselves speeding into the telemetry of the acceleration process of the natural release. So by doing that, we would go to a specific and see the life forms emerge into future states, and everything would just happen. So we became that, which that's what we are today. By the way, this is what we are today as a species. This is our species. This is who we are. But something happened, right? Because we're living in this primitive environment where we don't have any of our spherical technology, and we only have ruins of our civilization, right? If you see our very ancient civilization that created everything on this planet, they're all ruins, right? Remnants, right? All over the planet. Why? Because we self-destroyed ourselves. That's what happened. We entered warfare, unfortunately, with entities that came outside our planet, and they wanted to essentially be the epicenter of everything. And these entities came from different universes that we created, because eventually these life forms evolved into technology themselves. So they would be able to get to the central suns of those universes where they came from. And when they started to tap and tinker with the energy of the central sun, what they realized that these were filaments to our universe, because we created them with our consciousness. So these were gates, these were portals that they would access, and then we just teleport here to our universe. And then obviously when they get here, they realize who we are. We're the epicenter of everything, and we created them because we created the central suns that created them. So what ended up happening is that, remember, we were evolving without really fully knowing our potential. So we ended up creating these entities, which was our opposite, our polarity, our duality. You see, we were creators, they became destroyers. The opposite of us. We consume energy from the sun, they didn't, because they formed in planets that did not require energy from the sun, because they developed in cave systems, underground systems, not on the surface of the planets. So they tended to be insects and reptiles, because and they needed water, and the water was from the aquifers or the glacials, like the poles of the planets. So they started to become that, and that evolved into essentially a species that was able, in the end, once they made it to, because remember, they had their own technologies to evolve to the central sun of their universes, so they would make it here, and because they were seeking the creator. That's what they were doing, seeking life forms more intelligent than them, as they started to become what they became as a species, right? The opposite of our nature, destructors, destroyers. So they ended up coming to our universe in the end, and they saw our technologies everywhere, our primitive technologies at the time, our biological technology, non-biological technology, the spherical technology that we were creating, that essentially all the other life forms across our universe were using themselves in their own civilizations, because they wanted to get to our level of evolution eventually. And they knew who we were and all that. So essentially, when they got here, they couldn't access our technology or anything because it's encoded in our DNA. So it became this war between all these factions coming here, wanting to deal with us, and then the life forms originally from our planet, from the galaxies that we created, and the galaxies that came before that, or that formed after those that we created. So all these life forms were using our tech, so it eventually became this conflict. But that accelerating into the future, what ended up happening, they gained enough tech to reverse engineer our tech and create the moon. And the moon became this invading force that they would tidal lock to the planet, because it's a spaceship. The moon is a spaceship, just like our planet. So they tidal locked it to a planet to do all sorts. So they use it as all sorts of weaponry. I have spoken about this in the past. So essentially, what they ended up doing is coming in here and doing bad things to us. And as a result of that, our instincts kicked in as a result of the invasion and all the things that they were doing, the synthetics, right? So what ended up happening is that we destroyed everything because we were creating things, right? So we ended up realizing that what was happening was that in the beginning they couldn't come in because they lacked the technology. But when they gathered the technology, they knew that they couldn't come in because of the density of planet Earth. It was so close to the central sun that if they try to show up in their own true forms, they're reptoid, insectoid types that they are, so they would get disintegrated by the light because of the surface, because of the gravity, because of all sorts of interactions. They couldn't. They needed a space structure density that meet their requirements, and that was our DNA, our species. So they needed our species to be able to interact. So what they ended up doing to be able to do what they did in the end was to manufacture clones. So they found our samples, our DNA samples, because our footprints and fingerprints were all over the universe. All over the universe, all over the universe that we were manufacturing, right? Creating all sorts. We were the central species. So what they ended up doing, they started to clone us. So they started cloning humans so they can interact with us and stay like on the spaceship and the shadow being casted from, because essentially the moon, as you know, generates eclipses, right? But the moon is a non-biological, is created, is manufactured, is a spaceship. So this was created purposely at a size and at an equidistance that would be able to create the fantasy and illusion of covering the sun fully. And by covering the sun, it cuts our source of, we were using the sun, right? So because of our eyes, everything, we needed the energy of the sun so we can create with it. So they blocked it. So it's part of the invasion. They blocked the sun and then they were able to do what they did. So they ended up showing up here, but not themselves per se. They would stay within the shadow, like the beachhead that casted from the moon by covering the sun on the surface. And then out of the surface will come all these zombies, right? All these clones. All these clones will come out, right? All these orcs would come out, all these zombies. They were just our bodies, they're empty shells, right? Avatars. But they would splice them with their DNA so they can interface with them because they were reverse engineering our tech, so they knew stuff like that. So they were reverse engineering our tech, so they will use these clones and command them with the thought, so they will be the ones doing everything, the bad things. So what happened is that we saw that, right? And this was horrible because this object comes at a speed rate, a clip, and precisely designed to show up, cover the sun, and then because it shows up, you know, it's the gravitics of it, the energy hits the earth. So it creates all sort of cataclysmic events on the surface. That's why we only have ruins of our civilization, because everything got destroyed as a result of that. Because the Ice Age was that. It tilted Earth and the axis of it, and it changed everything. The environments changed as a result of the tilting, because it tilted the axis of Earth by shaking it with the energy that generated by showing up from outer space, right? In that vector covering the sun. So they did all what they did. So essentially, what ended up happening was that they had these avatars, these orcs, right? These zombies coming out of the way of looking human because they needed the space structure density, right? That's what they needed. They needed a space structure density to be able to interact and deal with us, with the technologies and all sorts, right? Weaponry, all sorts of sounds, synthetic sounds, right? Non-biological sounds, all sorts of things. Energy weapons. So they showed up. So what happened? Well, we realized immediately what was happening. That there was these inferior life forms reverse engineering our technology, and they invaded us because we were so advanced, but we weren't expecting it because remember, we were unconsciously creating, so we created them as a result. So it was our blind spot. You see, it was the blind side of our consciousness, our unconscious mind. So they showed up from the shadows. The opposite of us, right? We were sun-centric, they weren't. So they moon-centric, right? Moon-centric. They created the moon, cast shadow. Moon-centric, opposite of us, Our species is sun-centric. They're moon-centric. Okay? It's the opposite. So then they showed up, right? These forms. And then what we see is all these clones on the surface because we start to interact with them, but they just do bad things. So we realize that by interacting with them, interfacing with them, we identify the splicing so they can interface with the clones themselves. Because if clones didn't have life forms themselves, consciousness and self-awareness, it was them inhabiting them, right? From, as you know, from wherever they were, the moon or outside the moon, because the moon was just the invading force, but they had all sorts of supply chains backing up the moon, right? Because that was who they are. So that's just the nature. Destroyers, that's all they are. They seek to destroy. That's all they do. They're parasites. So essentially, they ended up doing what they did, and then we identify them. And by identifying them, because we interface with the clones, and then we realize that they didn't have life forms themselves. So by doing that, so what happened? What happened? Well, what happened is that we were able to identify the DNA genetic structure, who they were, the ones interfacing with the clones. So by doing that, we immediately, because we were more advanced than they were, right? So ancient, right? We created their universes. So where they came from, all right? So this is the level, right? That's why they wanted us as a trophy, because they thought that they could. That was the ignorance, right? So so they showed up, and that we ended up doing, the planet was under heavy attack. We were besieged. And that led to the fallout, which is the Ice Age, what we know as the Ice Age, right? Because before the Ice Age, there was no moon orbiting planet Earth, because the moon is artificial. It's non-biological creation, it's synthetic, okay? It's reversed engineered from our technologies that they stole from all the civilizations that they interacted with when they went trying to come into our planet in the first place, okay? So essentially, what ended up happening, pretty simple. So we identify them. So we dealt with them at the DNA structure. So there was no threat coming to Earth anymore. All the supply chains, all that, we dealt with it. All of it. So, but then we had all these bodies, right? All the orcs, all the zombies on the surface, right? That they interacted with. And the consciousness was in there because of the interfacing. So what we realized is that, and this was a step in evolution, right? That was a step in evolution for us, because we ended up realizing that that was our full circle as a species. Why? Because we needed this force, the opposite, the duality principle, right? Coming and interacting with us, proving to us that there's something that we didn't know about ourselves. And what we didn't know about ourselves is that we could harm ourselves, because we weren't into the business of harming ourselves. We were into the business of creating universes that create life forms, which we still are. That's our business. That's what we do as a species because of who we are. So they ended up showing us a new stage of our unconscious mind, which was they ended up using our tech to manufacture ourselves in the way of clones, so they would kill ourselves in the way of us killing ourselves with these clones attacking us. So we ended up realizing that we needed to integrate our consciousness by becoming conscious of the fact that we can also destroy. So because we did that, we ended up just wiping everything out. So dealing with them, so no one would ever come back to planet Earth and do what they did to us, so we would survival of the species. And very importantly, dealing with ourselves at that level of density and all the clones that were on the surface. Because by doing that and wiping everything out and starting with a clean slate, remember the planet hosts our DNA, so we would naturally form as a species anyway, because we created the planet ourselves to host our DNA structure to infinity. So the DNA structure was already there, so we knew that, and they didn't know that because they're not that intelligent. They're parasites. They consume, they don't create. So essentially, the what ended up happening was that we also we self-destroyed. That was the solution, because we ran all the telemetry to see what the ideal optimal outcome would be, and the optimal outcome will be is to deal with them so there is no threats coming here anymore, and to deal with ourselves so we ourselves don't use the technology and the consciousness of our DNA structure at that level. So our DNA, as a result of cleaning everything and starting from scratch, there will be a clean slate. So our DNA will go dormant. Our DNA will go dormant. And by our DNA going dormant, then we will be able to ourselves, so the DNA structures will reform again, right? Because we created this planet and our life form was everywhere. So, but with the knowledge, the memory, the DNA memories of all the events that took place, right? All this catastrophe, the fallout that was the Ice Age, and the self-destruction that led to that warfare that was horrible, and everything that happened, and the ruins of our civilization. And we wanted to leave the moon there, because the moon was the perfect proof when we rise to this level of consciousness and technology, so we understand what the moon is. And this is the stage where we are right now. So we are going to the moon soon. For real, not rockets. Our own technologies, proper technology. And we're going to understand what it is, which is a reverse engineer, a low-tech version of our tech that is essentially tidal locked to planet Earth. It can be removed and moved away, because it is a problem. The moon creates all sorts of issues on the surface. All these tides and all these problems, all these atmospheric pressures that shouldn't be there. But they're there because of this object that is being tidal locked there that needs to be removed. And it will very soon. So essentially, what ended up happening was that the fallout, right? So we needed to leave the moon as evidence, so we would eventually understand what that meant, because that meant our next step in evolution. We also needed to leave ruins of our civilization, the remnants, so we knew who we are and who we were, where we came from, and leave everything that we needed encoded in our DNA memories. So eventually, our DNA would stop being dormant. Okay, which is what has happened. Which has happened is that we've been, after the Ice Age, been a long time, right? A few thousand years. So all this time was enough for us to essentially deal with ourselves. That's why we have had so much domestic warfare, non-technical, like low-tech, primitive warfare on the surface among ourselves. Because in that way, we can integrate our own consciousness, right? Both sides of polarity, what we call good and evil, right? The light and the shadow, right? Who we are as a species, love, fear, love, hate, all that. And that's what we've been doing for the last few thousand years anyway. But you see, because love is a mechanism, the organism needed to learn that in order for us to re-access who we are, our DNA memories and our history, our heritage, we needed to go through this process, this painful process that would create the conditions for us to do what we've done. And the instinct was that the DNA went dormant and we just started to reproduce, right? We just went at it. And we're in the billions. We weren't that many in the past. We weren't as populous as we are now. But the planet can sustain many, many billions, many more billions on top of these. This planet can sustain an infinite number of life forms in a way, because we can get to the level that when we hit this critical threshold, then we can start retapping into our spherical technology and manufacture new planets so they can host a new population and tidal lock those planets to the central suns of the universes that we have created. So this is the next step. This is what the Republic of Planet Earth is. But we needed to get to this stage, so eventually someone would unlock our DNA structure for everybody. So it's a person, this has to be a human, that gets to that level of consciousness and self-awareness that unlocks the DNA structure for everyone. So as a result, we all evolve and ascend into who we are. So we now understand that the mechanism is love. So I happen to be the human that unlocked our DNA structure after it went dormant. So it's open for everyone now. And the mechanism is love, you see, is love. Love is the highest energy of creation. And because love is the highest energy of creation, Now we understand this, so we're starting to have downloads of our heritage and legacy, our DNA memories, all of us. And because love is the highest energy of creation, we're not going to self-destroy, because our light spherical technology that allows us to create planet Earth, and is what we're going to use to create the other planets so we can inhabit all the universes that we have created. As we start to remember who we are, because we're the most ancient species. It's all in our DNA. It's all within us. It's all within us. And this is why this infinite virtue cycle is so important, because it's biological and non-biological, and understanding the difference. Because by understanding the difference, it's crucial, because we know what we're capable of, what we've done in the past, and we're capable of doing. And it's all about love. It's the love of our hearts, the highest energy of creation. You see, because love is the epicenter of our hearts, and it's the highest energy. And by loving them, we unlocking all the keys. Love is this key, DNA key, right? Our human heart, that unlocks all the codes, all the messages, all the DNA memories within ourselves, so we can start recreating everything, but in modern times, here and now. And this is what the Republic of Planet Earth is. All of us, all humans. If you're a human, you have a heart. If you have a heart, you can love. If you love, then you can tap into your DNA structure. And the next step is that. The next step is manifesting our spherical technologies. But because, remember, there is a fail-safe mechanism. And this fail-safe mechanism is there on purpose. It's part of the evolution of the DNA. By integrating our consciousness and knowing our polarity, our full extent of what we can do as a civilization, the good things and the bad things, right? By understanding that, then we know that we find the new polarity. And the new polarity is understanding that love is the energy of creation, the highest energy of a human heart. And that's why the DNA can only be unlocked by love, which is the highest energy anyway. Because when you love, you're conscious, you're self-aware, you're not destructive in nature, you're benevolent. And when you're benevolent, you only create. So you're not going to use this the most powerful technology in the universes, which is our technology. There's no technology in this universe or any of the universes that we have created more powerful than ours. Okay, because we created everything. So, but we cannot use that technology if you're not good. So only good humans can use this technology. And we all have the potential to be good. Why? Because we all have a human heart. We all have love in our hearts. We all have love in our hearts, which is the highest energy of creation. And when you love, because we're in this level of density now, because of the critical mass that we have here, because we can all stare at the sun, because we all in this peaceful environment now, the planet has reached a critical mass. And what happens is that this is by design. The DNA did that on purpose. We had to do all the things that we have to do to learn about ourselves and create all what we needed to create, all the support systems to sustain 8+ billion lives, heartbeats. So we can get to this level. So we understand that the mechanism in the 21st century and into the future forever is love. Because by loving, then we can reclaim that's ours, our DNA structure, who we are as a species. And then we can recreate everything, but better, because we know that we're not going to be doing those things to us, because only love opens the key. Only love. Love is the key. Love is the key that opens the DNA structure. And love comes from the heart. You see, love comes from the heart. And is the key that opens our DNA memory so we can remember. And because we are capable of creating universes with our consciousness, we need to be tapping to the sun and the energy of the sun and the love, sunlight and love as one. And when we do these, then we manifest our tech. Because it's encoded in our DNA. But only love does it, because it's the highest energy. And that technology is not gonna, he understands, he's intuitive. He's not gonna show up if you're faking love. Or have a proxy that loves and then you're behind it, right? No, It's not how it works. Because it's intelligent. It learned from everything that we lived through. It already knows what clones are. It already knows what interfacing is. It knows this. It's not going to work. It will never work. Because it has to be real love, authentic love. And it's the highest energy of creation, and it comes from the human heart. And that is the key. Using that with the sun of energy of the sun together as one, and then it unlocks everything. Because that's it. you see, and each human has these encoded in us. So we all have light spherical technology within us. So in fact, it's our freedoms, it's our rights as a Republic of Planet Earth Constitution, who we are, for all of us to have light spherical technology. This is who we are. We have technological freedoms, infinite freedoms. So by having these, then all of us can do what we do best as a species, which is to create. Because love is the energy of creation, and this is who we are. So by tapping into our DNA structure, by loving with all our hearts and staring at the sun and using that energy to open everything up, we will start to manifest our tech again. The spherical technology that allows us to manufacture this in the first place, to come to this area, to evolve into what we have evolved. So with all this technology, then we can do all these incredible things, all these amazing things, because as we start to grow in numbers, which will be trillions and eventually an infinite number of us, we need these planets to inhabit the central suns of the universes that we're creating and have created. Because at this stage, we have created an infinite number of universes, because we've been around for an infinite number of cycles. So we need to populate those infinities, and we need planets that host our DNA structure so we can live in those planets. And then from there, we can use our tech if we want to move out and go anywhere else and explore all the lands and territories of all the universes that we have created ourselves. And what would that lead to? Well, that would lead to meeting other species as well, more evolved than us, or in the process of becoming just like us, or equal to us. Because remember, we weren't the first species to rise to this level, because we came from a universe out of an infinite number of universes. So there is an infinite number of species that already have our status, that have gone through similar things that we have gone through to get to that level. And these are our allies. They're everywhere. And they are very happy because they know who we are as a species. They know that we have achieved this status again because we integrated our unconscious mind. We disintegrated the shadow. We know that love is the answer, that love is a mechanism to create. Love is a mechanism to create. You see, we know the difference. Biological, non-biological coming as one. So we can keep on creating to infinity, because it's who we are. This is our species. This is our nature. We are the human race. This is who we are. We are the human race. We truly are this. This is our DNA memory. This is our heritage, our legacy, our culture, who we are. The most ancient species at the epicenter of the universe. And we've evolved into this beautiful life form that allows us to create infinities with our consciousness and self-awareness. And because we needed to go through what we went through. We needed to go through all this to learn, so it doesn't happen again. You see, it's part of evolution. You learn, we learn, and it was a necessary step. And this is never going to happen again, because the future of humanity is very bright, because we are the Republic of Planet Earth, and this is the here and now. This is just the very beginning of what we've already done, because remember, we're infinite telemetry. This is just a memory of the infinite future that is ahead, that we are living at this level of density, because this is the genesis story of who we are, the story of humanity, where everything started. This is where everything started. Humanity, I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. I'm so Ra-Ray. I really do. Remember, love is the highest energy of creation. Love with your heart. Love with your heart, with the highest energy of it. Love with all your heart and all your mind. Stare at the sun. Use your compass, identity and true self, purpose, time and energy, action, why, how, flow, true north and destination. Know your nature. Know who you are as a species. I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. I love you all.